If you are raising pigs out on pasture and you're looking for a very durable, reliable feeder, this is definitely the way to go and you will not regret it. Hi, I'm Christine Hernandez, Livestock Specialist for Heifer USA here at Heifer Ranch. I have been raising pigs out on pasture for the last 6 years. Even while raising pigs out on pasture where they can forage and root around, your number one cost for raising pigs is going to be your feed. And in order to decrease the amount of feed that you are feeding and that cost, you need to really pay attention to the amount of feed waste that you have. And in order to do that, you need to have a really good feeder that works for you and your system.
In this video, we'll discuss how this feeder works, how to customize it with accessories, when to introduce it to your pigs, how to decrease feed waste, and how you can easily maintain your feeder for year-round use. Stay tuned to learn some quick and easy tips to maintain these feeders for years to come.
So over the last few years, as we have increased the number of pigs we are raising here at Heifer USA out on pasture, I did a lot of internet searching. And I wanted to look for a feeder that covered 3 main topics. The first one, of course, was going to be decreasing the amount of feed wastage that the pigs were doing throughout their 6 to 8 months here at the ranch. I wanted to have a feeder that would hold a large amount of feed and that the pigs could access that feed all the time. And third, I wanted a feeder that was low labor and being able to bring bulk feed out to the pasture for the pigs. Finding a feeder that did all 3 of those, I came across the big-wheeled Osborne feeders. And when I bring feed down here to the pigs with these shorter feeders, I usually bring 1,700 to 1,800 pounds of feed at a time to fill these up. These big wheel Osborne feeders, the RO45 and the RO65, they are designed to be outside, out on pasture. And so let's get into the mechanisms of how they actually work. Around the whole feeder, there are 12 head slots for the pigs to get in there. So 12 pigs can eat out of it at a time. They're not gonna be trying to bully each other away from a head slot at the Osborne feeders. So this is not a gravity feeder, it's more of a on-demand feeder. So there's only going to be feed inside this trough when the pigs work to get it, when the pigs let the feed down. So you bring feed down and you fill up this hopper of the feeder. And what the pigs need to do is, as they are eating out of this trough, they are going to be hitting this trough arm, with their nose, with the side of their face. They're not necessarily going to be doing it on purpose, but as they are in their feeding, trying to get some of the feed out from underneath there, it's just gonna automatically get hit. And it's when this trough arm moves, it's connected to a feed sweep on the inside of this feeder, and that is going to actually sweep the feed out from inside the hopper and release feed down into the trough where the pigs can get it. As the farmer, you get to determine how much feed is coming out of the feeder as the pigs move the feed arm. And you control that with this dial and this lever on the outside of the feeder. And that is going to control the height of a cone that's inside of this hopper. So the lower the cone is within the feeder, the less feed that's going to come out. The higher the cone, the more feed that is able to come out. However, the higher the cone, the more feed that is on top of that feed sweep, the heavier it is. So it's going to actually be more difficult for the pigs to be moving that trough arm to get feed out. So I like to set my cone level to about a level 3 or 4. So I only want it to be roughly an inch off of that feed sweep. And what's awesome about these feeders is once you have that level set and the amount of feed that's coming out works for you, you can just leave it. You shouldn't have to bother with the height of your cone anymore. When you buy a big wheel Osborne feeder, it does not come assembled, so you're gonna have to assemble it yourself, but there's some really good directions that you can follow. And then there's also additional items you can purchase to go along with your feeder. So for example, this is the RO 45, so it holds 45 bushels of feed. You can get the RO 65, which will have another level on it. And we have one of those that's gonna hold 65 bushels of feed. So you always have the option to add more rings onto your feeder so that they hold more feed out on pasture. You wanna make sure that your tractor is able to lift that size of a feeder and also lift feed high enough to get it in those taller big wheel feeders. Another additional item you can purchase to go along with your big wheel feeder are some skids that go under your feeder. So this is the skid that you can purchase to go underneath your feeder. So your feeder will be attached to that skid, and that is just a few inches thick, and that will help keep your feeder off of the ground. And then we also add our own type of skid to the bottom of that one. So we can use 4x4 treated wood, different types of wood. So that's going to keep your feeder up off of the ground more, out of the mud. And then it makes it so simple for when you come down here with your tractor and your pallet forks. You know, there's plenty of clearance space for you to get your pallet forks underneath there and lift up your feeder so you can move it to the next paddock, move it to a new area within your paddock. And then the chances of you hitting the fiberglass with your forks have decreased if you have more space under there. If you are going to put additional wood skids underneath your Osborne feeder, a tip that I have for you would be to make sure that your skids are parallel with your lid as it's open. Because when you come down to fill your feeder, you're going to bring your tractor and you want to just pull over top of your feeder and dispense within the hopper. It's easier for me to bring our transport tote down here and just pull up to the feeder and get over top of it and be able to open that hopper door. If these skids are perpendicular to the lid, then as you pull in here to dispense more feed and you're trying to open the lid of your transport tote, this lid on the feeder is actually in your way, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to deliver feed to the pigs. The big wheel Osborne feeders are rated for 90 pigs, starting at about 50 pounds each. I personally like to do one feeder per 50 pigs just to give them more space, more feed access. And I have noticed that if the pigs are around 50 pounds, it's actually more difficult for them to eat out of this feeder. So they're a little bit shorter. They're gonna have to get their feet in that trough in order to reach and get the feed from in there. And then sometimes they're just not strong enough to move that trough arm. So I like to wait to introduce our pigs to this type of feeder, until they're about 75 to 80 pounds or so. To help decrease feed wastage within the trough, I pay attention to how much feed is in this trough. You don't want the trough to be filled with feed overflowing. You want the pigs to actually have to reach in there to work a little bit to get the feed. What else are the pigs doing during the day? They're rooting around, they're laying around, and they're eating and drinking. So you can keep them a little more occupied if you make them work a little harder for that feed. When we have feed starting to accumulate on the outside of the trough, I will just push it inward to where the pigs can reach it better. That way we're not wasting any of it. If you get too much feed past that ledge, that's going to turn into feed waste. So the way the pigs are eating out of here, they're reaching in to get a little bit of that feed. Yes, they can reach down and eat in front of that ledge a little bit, but the stuff that comes to the outside of the trough, the way their faces are, they're not gonna be able to eat that feed. And they're actually just gonna be smushing that down with their jowls as they're reaching in to eat that fresh feed. We raise pigs out on pasture all year long, so they're out here in all different types of weather. That also means that we have our Osborne feeders out here in all different types of weather as well. So in the heat, in the sun, in the rain, and in the snow. As long as your lids are properly closed, your feed is not going to get wet within your feeder or even within your trough where the pigs are eating. Since it is self-regulating and it's an on-demand feeder, the feed may get mixed in with a little bit of that rainwater when the pigs come and agitate the feed wheels. But that's just gonna cause your feed, to get a little moist, but the pigs are going to eat that up right away. So you're not gonna have any feed wastage due to the weather or the elements, as long as your lid is closed all the way. Once we get into the muddy season and the pigs come up to the feeder and are eating covered in mud, like on their jowls and on their nose, we do get a little bit of mud buildup within the feeder because we're out on pasture and pigs love the mud. But that's okay. I actually use just two very simple tools to help get rid of that mud so that we're not wasting any feed. I use a paint scraper or a putty knife and a kitty litter scoop. The place the mud will get stuck at and kind of accumulate is actually going to be on the very inside of this trough. So I just take my putty knife and you can scrape along the inside and get that mud out of the way. And then you can either get it out with your hands or you can use your kitty litter scoop. Scoop it up, shake out so that the good feed will drop back down into the trough, and then you can get rid of that mud or that wet feed. Here at Heifer USA, I have 6 of these RO45s and I have 1 of the RO65s, and I will use these forever. These are very durable, rugged feeders for pigs. These pigs are nearly 300 pounds and they are eating out of it just fine. They can't damage this feeder. Something that I have experienced with these feeders a few times over the last couple of years is when the feeder is full or half full, the pigs are spinning the feed arm in the trough, but no feed is being dispensed from the hopper. You can reach in there and you can manually move that feed sweep and that will get the feed to drop out of there. But if no feed is being dispensed when you move the trough arm, there's a simple solution to that. And that just means that your feed sweep and your trough arms, the 2 bolts that connect those, are either loose or missing. If your feeder is full, unfortunately, you're going to have to manually spin that feed sweep until the pigs can consume all of that feed within the feeder, and you'll have to take your cone out and climb into the feeder and tighten those bolts in there, but then it'll be all fixed and ready to go and you can use it again. Another thing that happens to these feeders, I'll have the lid all the way opened and the pigs will come up and rub on it. They'll try to eat underneath it. And if I don't feed the pigs and then close the lid when I'm done, the pigs can be strong enough to actually detach the lid from your feeder. And so that just means that you'll have to get, a wrench and a flathead screwdriver, disconnect the pieces inside that lid and reattach it so that your feeder's on all the way. But those are also very simple fixes that you can do with just one person. That was my quick walkthrough of our Osborne feeders here at Heifer USA. And if you like this video or found it valuable, please like and subscribe.
And if you'd like to order an Osborne pig feeder for your farm, click the link in the description of this video. Keep learning about pastured pork production with this video on must-have tools for pastured pigs, or this deep dive into raising pigs for beginners.